I would like to just say first is, we are at the very early stage of what's going on in the change. Technology is, somebody made a great quote the other day, which was, technology is outgrowing the tech sector. What that means is that, when we think about how we're applying technology to different solutions in different industries, we're just at the very beginning of this. And so I really appreciate being invited to be on the jury for some of these new pitches for startups, because I don't see other startups as competitors. In this industry, I think, when I think about the problem that we have, this is the competitor, pen and paper, right? And we are a relatively young company. I know that, thank you, it sounds like some people have heard about Vivino, and we appreciate your support and you're using the app, but the reality is that there is a lot that we can still do. It is still a very, very early stage, and for the average consumer, the way that we think about it is that it's the pain point that they have in terms of what they want to buy, the frustration. That was the start, the genesis of our company. You're standing there in the aisle, you have all these wines, you have a beautiful selection, but also you have an overwhelming selection. And so I encourage any kind of solutions which try to help the consumers make better choices, make more informed choices. So big data, it's an interesting, right? It's a new buzzword. If you remember 10 years ago, who remembers Web 2.0, right? That was the buzzword at the time. And, of course, we can sort of frown at some of these buzzwords, but what I like about them is that they try to convey a concept to a larger audience, right? When I talk to my engineers about big data, they're like, big data, it's not clear what big data is, it's so many things, right? But I think it's an interesting way for people to understand how a new idea, or a new concept, it doesn't even have to be technology, but it's a sort of a meme which brings new opportunity into an industry. So I like the term big data. And so what we want to focus on right here, because big data can apply everywhere, is how that can help create the new wine consumer. So as I said, we are focused on the consumer and their experience and how we can make that better. And we're all going on a wine journey, right? There are some of us that are very educated and we know the direction we're going. There are lots of others, trust me, lots and lots of others who don't know where they're going. They're selecting bottles at random. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're not happy. So that's our purpose as Vivino, is to try and help them make those choices, make them enjoy their wine journey. And this was a quote by Sir Haggerty, lose the mystery, keep the magic. And I think that's really what we're trying to focus on is, there is all the magic of wine, right? Somebody spoke about the romance of opening the bottle and all those kinds of things, and we want to keep all those things. We just want to help, make sure you avoid the ones you don't like and pick more of the ones that you do like, right? So that's where we are. So going into big data, I think, well, what data do we have? How can I share with you a little bit the kind of data that we're capturing? So this is just some data about what we know about French wine. So this is in the almost 3 years that Vivino has been around. We know now, and this is all uses, as you know, scanning labels, right? And so we know with about 55,000 wineries, we know about 900,000 wines, vintages. We have over 25 million scans just of French wine. That's 22% of our total scans that we have. And we have 5 million ratings or tasting notes. And so French wine, you guys would be happy to hear, is the most scanned and rated wine in Vivino. So I think that's a great thing, but at the same time, this is crowdsourced data. So I know that some people have come to me and say, yes, but it's crowdsourced. So the good side about crowdsourced data is that we can get it and we can accumulate it very fast. We've got everybody who's using the app giving us the data. But we also have issues with accuracy of our data, right? There are things where we get it wrong. At the rate that you're collecting data so fast, there are things that we're getting wrong. And we're going to, but we know about that. And we're going to get better and better at that. So that's not so much the concern. Ultimately, the data will get corrected for the errors that are found. But the interesting thing is, once you have the data, what can you do with the data? So I wanted to show you one little example of what we did recently. We took 5,000 wines in our system, and we compared them to the Robert Parker ratings and the Wine Spectator ratings. And what we found is that we have a very strong correlation between their ratings and our ratings. Once we have about 50 plus ratings on a wine, we're very much in line with what they have. So in some ways you can say the 90-point Robert Parker is now the 4.0 star Vivino, which is interesting also from another side, from a consumer standpoint, right? Because as much as Robert Parker is amazing at how much wine he can taste, he can't taste all the wine in the world, right? These guys, there are 300,000 new vintages coming out every year, right? And Robert Parker, from what I understood, he can taste like 200 in a day or something. So he's impressive, but even at that scale, it's not going to work. So what we estimate is that about only 25% of the wines in the world have been rated by the experts and put on their Facebook page, thank you that they've been recognized by Vivino as being a top-rated wine. And so this is the kind of thing that we could do to kind of open up the information to the entire industry. So, is there a way, you guys can't see any of these things, is there a way to close these things up here? My slides are a little bit dark. So, what I wanted to talk about is, how do we collect this data, right? So, obviously you guys know, we're very focused on what the possibilities now with the smartphone. And the stats we have is 84% of smartphone owners are using their phone for help in stores. So this is no longer just a couple of geeks kind of thing. This is now the mass consumer that is using their device in the store, right? And the device that they're using, if you look at these new phones, they are very, very powerful. So that's what you're sort of saying. They have basically a supercomputer in their pocket if you compare to the kinds of things that they could get 10, 15 years ago. So these devices are very powerful, and as you can see with shipments, you guys have probably seen all the stats before, but the shipments of smartphones compared to the shipments of PCs is staggering. And what that really is doing is that smartphones, when you think about the penetration of the internet to the global population, we are now at a point where in 2015, about 65% of the world population, of the adult population, has now access to the internet, and most of that is actually now being driven by the smartphone. Where we thought we would give everybody a PC, that idea didn't work so well. We want to give everybody a smartphone. And if in countries like Western Europe and the US, those numbers, this is the global population. So you can imagine that we're even further along on this, with a year or 2 years ahead, if you look at places like France. The other interesting stat is time spent. So the time that people have spent connected or looking at the internet, they're actually now in the US spending more time doing that through an app than they are doing it through the web. So apps are now a very, very common method for everyday people to access the internet. So the kinds of things that we're trying to do now are really leveraging what is a macro trend across the globe. And so this is essentially, the little mathematical formula that we have. If you think about, there's going to be 3 times more smartphones than PCs across the globe by 2020, and all of this kind of data that can be collected compared to what this PC could give you before. So for example, it's personal. You can take it everywhere. It has sensors, it has cameras, it has your location, it has context. So when I say context, the nice thing about it is, right at the moment that you're doing something, it is there to be able to give you information. And that's actually what's become, for Vivino, the magic moment, right? It's like, I'm drinking this wine, tell me something about this wine. They scan it right there, and that's become, even for us, sort of the viral thing, is because people see that they're getting information about the wines right at the time when they're consuming the wine. And that's become a really, thank you very much. So that's become a great thing that the smartphone makes possible. Payment, of course, social platform, and easy to use. So, with all that data, you could capture tons of different information, right? So, let me tell you a little bit about what we're thinking about from Vivino's perspective. So, these are what we call the spheres of data that we're really thinking about. Taste preference is a really interesting one, and to be honest with you, it's probably going to be the most challenging one. But you can imagine that ultimately, we're trying to help you find more of the wine that you like. So we need to somehow understand what you like in order to be able to make some of the right recommendations. So fortunately, we have wine ratings. We also there are characteristics of wine that we can use as data points to help us with that. There is wine purchase intent, so we know which wines that people are looking at. And there's segmentation, so we can start saying things like people who drink this kind of wine are in a certain segment, so when somebody drinks another bottle of a different kind, we can probably assume that it would be a wine that segment enjoys. So segmentation can do a lot for us. The other one is location. So if we want to try and help you understand if there's wine, where can I get it? Where is it available? Is it available around me, right? So we now have obviously a lot of information about what's available at the wineries, but the other ones is retailers. And as you know, we've done now this partnership with Wine Searcher, which is giving us a lot of information about what's available online through online merchants. But actually, if you think about the offline context, I think somebody mentioned, with the photos, people are scanning, so we know the location where those scans are taking place. So we can start to get a sense of what wines are available at those locations as well. Because as much as we would, the convenience of buying online is great, 85% of wines are still being purchased offline, right? The convenience of being able to go around the corner to get that bottle of wine is still the pain point that we want to be able to solve as well. So having some of that offline information is great. Restaurants, as you guys know, we've now launched a wine list scanner. The wine list scanner is essentially helping put information about those wines, right? If you think about that, that's the time when you're sitting in the restaurant and you get that 5-page wine list and you're asked to make a choice and all your friends are sitting around, okay, what are you going to pick, right? So what information do you have to make it a good choice? So the idea with the wine list scanner that we created is just that we can give you, for all those wines, we can superimpose the ratings, and you can drill down into getting the details, the description from the winery and things like that to help you make a choice. But at the same time, of course, we now know what wines are in that restaurant. The other one, tasting events. So how do we make it easy for people when they're going around at a tasting event to get information about what wines are available there at tasting events? So that's another one too. And tied with that is prices. So prices is an interesting challenge, right? Because people are very sensitive about prices. But the reality is that people, ultimately, we're trying to help people think about wines that they can buy on their budget. Vivino is not trying to tell you if you buy $10 wine, we're not trying to tell you to buy $50 wine. That is not our goal. We hope that over time, as you appreciate wine, that you will start developing a palate and want to try more expensive wine, but we're not going to try and force everybody to buy $50 wine. We want them to find good wine in a budget, at a price point that's within their budget. So and then the last one, and this ties together a lot of different things. So the user location, of course, if it's online, it's fairly easy. We can help them find an assortment of wine that's available online. But we're already doing, if you guys know Foursquare has essentially created an ID for every single location of every business around the world. I don't know what they're missing, but it's so extensive at this point that lots of companies are relying on that just as a reference point. It's almost like the Google map for locations, right? And so we can map GPS positions to Foursquare IDs, and we know that that Foursquare ID matches to a restaurant, or it matches to a shop, or something like that. There's other technology coming out. Geofencing is an interesting one. So the idea that within let's see, we can define boundaries. That's maybe the best way, if you guys don't know geofencing, you can define boundaries around a location. So I can walk to a certain place, and as I walk into this, let's say it's a Carrefour or a Leclerc or something, so it's, oh, you're in Carrefour. We happen to know some of the wines that are here. Is this, let's help you find some wines. In the retail sector, iBeacons is also becoming something that they are looking to adopt very rapidly as well. And the idea behind the iBeacons is that it's a very cheap little device you put inside the store, and it has an ID. And these are recognized by the smartphone. So as I walk in, all of a sudden we know we're in this location because of that. And you're going to see this coming up in the fashion industry and any kind of retail situation. But the iBeacons also become a way that we can sort of have a sense of where you are. So these three things, these are the areas sort of we're looking at, and obviously there's the golden triangle in the middle that we're really thinking about. And that would be, as I talk about this, for us, big data, we define it as how can we take this information and apply it to give you some insight or to help you in a certain use case as a consumer. So in the retail location, right, you can walk into a store and be notified about wines that are available, wines that you will like, that match your taste profile. You can filter those based on food pairing or occasion or price. And you can get notified when a favorite wine is available on sale, right? So I don't know how you guys do it, but my mother in Copenhagen, she's looking at her special grocery store every week to see what's on sale, right? She has to look at this pages and pages every weekend, and then she's like, oh, my wine's on sale. How about if we could just notify you, right? It's a benefit to the supermarket is going to do the sale. How about we can help them bring the traffic to their location? The other one is a restaurant. They walk into a restaurant and we can recommend wines for them, right? They can filter again based on food pairing, occasion, price. They can read interesting facts. So one of the things that we found with our users is education is a really interesting thing about wine. You start learning about wine, but as you start learning, you also realize how much you don't know about wine, right? It's a huge topic. But we do hope to try and educate people slowly about wine, but we know that certain users are going to want to know more, and some users aren't going to want to know so much. But what's very common is just when you're enjoying a wine, you want to know a couple of things. Tell me a little bit about the winemaker, tell me a little bit about the region, and things like that. And so we can already help them with that. And of course, if you're in a restaurant and you really love that bottle, why wouldn't it be so nice to be able to write there? And again, this is when you talk about context. I'm here in front of this wine at this very point. How do I support this wine right now? And I'll give you one. It sounds like I'm running out of time, so I'll give you a last one here. So this is at tasting locations. So I can be at a winery at a tasting event, and I get recommended wines to try. I can read interesting facts about it, and I can check the prices. So I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of an idea, sort of how you can think about that from the producer's standpoint. The producers typically are selling to distributors and have very little understanding of what's going on further down the chain. What we would like to do is help to create some kind of transparency to them, so they can see what the market sentiment is about their wine. Where are their wines being sold? Allow them to communicate with customers. There are customers, as you can see here on the side, that are super excited about their wines. And if you reply to them, it's like wow, I got a reply from the winery. Like, you create a moment for a consumer, and he can be a very influential person in, telling his friends about it and so on. And what we think is a little bit different here, because I was here a few months ago, and I remember there was a guy from Facebook standing, and a lot of the wine producers were asking, well, I'm not getting any traffic to my Facebook page. And what we're trying to say here is that you don't have to drive traffic anywhere. This is where the conversation is happening, so we can make it easy for you to respond to this, because this is where they are talking about it in context.